He's Dr. Alan Sills, the NFL's chief medical officer and neurosurgeon, and he joins us on the program. Doc, thanks for joining us. I was told you have surgery in about 10 minutes. Can they start without you, or do you need to be in there?
I'm going to need to be in there, Dan, so we're going to have to make a hard stop on this. But
Okay.
thanks for having me on.
All right. Explain what your job is with the NFL.
So, Dan, I help oversee all the health and safety efforts, which means working with all the club medical staffs, all of our medical committees, certainly our partners at the NFL Players Association and their medical staffs, as well as all of our research partners and engineers, epidemiologists, and people that help us, basically touching and helping to execute all the things that affect health and safety of players throughout the league.
When you start to look at the NFL's plan coming up this fall, and I know it feels like each week a lot happens. You know, if we look back where we were 3 months ago, who knew we would be where we are right now and where we're going to be in 2 or 3 months? So is it your job to sort of look down the road, or do you have to stay in the moment of trying to adapt to whatever we're seeing on a daily basis with this virus?
Well, I think there's some of both, Dan. And you made a great point, which I've been telling people. I say it feels like about 5 years since we all started quarantining and sheltering in place. It's actually been probably about 100 days. And that's the same time interval we have from now to the start of our season. So you think about how much we've learned, how much more awareness we have, the new technologies that are emerging. We expect all that's going to continue and to put us in a different place. So I think what we have to do is make the best decisions we can at each stage with the knowledge in hand, but also try to prepare and remain, what the phrase I've been saying to everybody, flexible and adaptable. Because in this situation, we're going to be adapting football to the coronavirus, not the virus to football. And so it's crucially important that we have that mindset of flexibility and adaptability and using that new knowledge along the way.
What's your biggest concern this football season?
I think, like everyone, we're dealing with a novel virus that no one can really predict. And so I think that it's impossible to know which direction it's going to take us. And I think that's true not just for the NFL, but for the country and for the world. So I think that's why we stay in very regular contact with public health authorities, with the CDC, with the White House task force, with public health authorities in each state and each of our club markets. And we just have to work in a very collective fashion as we do what's best for not only just the NFL, but for the public at large.
Are you 100% confident we're playing football this fall?
You know, I don't think any of us can be 100% confident of anything with regard to this virus. I would say that I'm very optimistic that where we're tracking, we're moving in that direction. But I think throughout this, Dan, we've said, look, we have to be cognizant of what's happening from a public health standpoint. The NFL is not just going to put our head down and say we're charging forward no matter what. I think you saw that with our draft, right? You know, there were a lot of people that said, well, we couldn't or shouldn't do the draft. But we said, look, we've got this set of things we'd like to do. How can we do that and do it in concert with what the current public health recommendations are? And I think we wound up with a really unique and special event that also raised a whole lot of money for very needed relief efforts. So that's the same approach we've got to take here. We've got to take really careful look and work very collaboratively, again, with our Players Association, their advisors, with public health authorities, and make the best and safest decision for all of our stakeholders, our players, coaches, fans, everybody that's in the NFL family.
What do you think of the NBA plan?
You know, I've been in very regular contact with the chief medical officer of the NBA and all the professional sports leagues. We share with each other regularly our learnings. We're all confronting the exact same issues. And I think that notionally, we all have the same basic approach to that. There are obviously some subtle nuances and differences from one league to another just based on operational issues. But I think that, again, the NBA's tried to do just what we've done, which is be very thoughtful, to really be cautious, to work in a stepwise fashion to keep everybody as safe as possible. And again, we're all learning from each other in this. We talk not only to each other in North America, but we talk to sports leagues around the world, the Bundesliga, the Australian Football League. We're all trying to share and collaborate and learn from each other through this event.
And we keep talking about, well, not me, but the experts keep talking about this second wave. And I said, let me know when the first wave ends, because like we don't know this, Doc, with when does the first wave end and then that second wave if it is coming back. So how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You know, there's a saying in the medical community that all models are wrong, but some are actually useful. And I think that's true here, that it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. Again, I think we just have to be flexible and adaptable. We have to make the best decisions we can with the knowledge at hand. And as you said, that's very hard to predict, and it also varies from region to region. What's happening in one part of the country may be very different from the other part of the country. So I think, as I said, we want to make sure we're hand in glove with our Players Association and with public health authorities to make the best decisions, whatever the situation on the ground may be at that time.
You had Ezekiel Elliott, some other Cowboys, some of the Texans who tested positive. If this was the week of a game, what would be protocol? And with Zeke Elliott and some of these other players, what safeguards would be in place here, and how long would they be out?
So I think, obviously, I can't comment specifically on any case, but in general, what our protocols are moving towards is we want to identify anyone who's newly infected at the earliest possible moment and get them isolated from the rest of the team environment. And again, Dan, this isn't just about players. This is coaches, athletic trainers, strength and conditioning staff, anybody in what we're calling that team ecosystem. We want to identify them at the earliest phase of infection, remove them from the rest of the environment, get them the appropriate treatment, and then watch and monitor that recovery. So our protocol will detail exactly what we do at each step of that. It's also really important that we clear them appropriately to make sure they're not infected when they come back, and to screen for things like some of the cardiac complications that can happen after COVID infection. So we'll have all that detailed out. Again, we're working hand in glove with the Players Association on what that protocol looks like.
What would be the minimum that somebody would have to sit out if they tested positive?
Well, again, I think that's based upon public health guidelines, and there's certain guidelines depending on whether you have symptoms, when the last time your symptoms were, what your test status is. It's hard to give you an exact number, but I mean, I think you're looking at someone missing at least a couple of weeks' time after a positive test. It's not going to be you test positive one day and you're back 2 or 3 days later. There's going to be a time interval in there. Again, our knowledge on that may continue to evolve a little bit. But I'd say at a minimum, it's going to be a couple of weeks' time.
What will Facemask look like this season? Will there be any alterations to them?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. You probably heard that we've been working with a group of engineers to look at some alternative designs of the face mask with sort of an extended shield that covers parts of the face mask. I have to say, when I first heard about the idea, I thought it was probably the dumbest thing I'd heard. I didn't really think it would work. But as I've looked at the designs and the creativity, I'm actually incredibly impressed with that work. And so, again, we're working together with engineers from the Players Association and actually trying some of those models on different players and getting feedback. And we'll see where that takes us. But I'm optimistic that we may be able to find something that's very useful there. Again, trying to help prevent respiratory droplets from being spread around while on the field.
I know we look at these athletes and they're young, they're healthy, but is a 300-pound lineman healthy? Are they more at risk than somebody who's a running back who is, weighs 225?
Yeah, I think that's something we're still trying to learn. There's still so much about this virus that we don't know. We do know, obviously, again, age and certain other factors, medical comorbidities that seem to confer more risk, but how that translates into an elite athlete population, we just don't know. I think the take-home message is we got to do all we can to keep everybody safe, whether it's a 300-pound lineman or a 200-pound kicker, quarterback. We want to try to mitigate risk for everyone in there, keep them as safe as possible. And as I said, if they do become newly infected, get them isolated and treated appropriately so that we don't spread around to the rest of the team.
All right, go wash your hands. Good luck in surgery.
Thanks. We always do that part, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Doc. That's Dr. Alan Sills, the NFL Chief Medical Officer, and, oh, by the way, a neurosurgeon.